What's up, guys? Welcome to Nutmegged, the podcast where a Yank and a Brit talk about the beautiful game from across the pond. I'm, of course, Faisal in Dubai, holding down the crown in the UK at the moment. Andrew, of course, representing the Stars and Stripes. How are you today, bud?
I am phenomenal. We're actually getting ready for game day this week. We got a Wednesday midweek game coming up for the college team that I coach, so we're getting excited. Should be a good one.
Nice, man. All happening in real life, happening in the Premier League, happening in the US, the UK, international. We're currently in the middle of the international games at the moment. So we've got a couple of friendlies, a couple of World Cup qualifiers at the moment. So we've got some interesting points to look upon at the moment, which we'll get into that with yourself, Andrew. But of course, we're back. If you listen to our last episode, we're obviously going through our last season predictions, getting an understanding, talking about our current predictions for the new season. But what we wanted to do was use a bit of time just to rant. I think that's the best way to look at it at Manchester United. Have a look back at their season. Have a look about this season in general as well, just to kind of see what were some highlights from our side, and see what we're looking at. How was the season looking at? And we know, if you're avid listeners, you know this isn't going to be a very happy episode. And of course, we're going to look at more generally about what do I Nutmegged of the week, and we're going to learn more about the US men's national team, and of course, a transfer market as well, which is going to be interesting. One of the biggest transfer markets of all time, which is interesting. We'll get into. Andrew, do you want to start us off with a couple of highlights from last season? Let's kick this off.
Yes, I would love to do that. And a spoiler alert. Yeah, you said it's not going to be happy. I'm actually happy because, spoiler, Onana looks like he's out. That's good news if you're a Manchester United fan, at least from my perspective. But before we dive into that, yes, let's talk about some of the highlights that we saw from last season. And before we dive into some of the things that did happen last season, and we're already into the new season, which is just ridiculous, I want to talk about Liverpool very quickly. That was my biggest highlight, and probably everyone's, because it wasn't necessarily something that everyone had predicted, just because of the manager turnover that had happened. And not to mention, there's a lot of manager turnover that happened last season and now coming into this season. So that is something to look forward to. I think that'll provide some exciting talking points as we go through. But Liverpool, absolutely dominant last season. One of the reasons a lot of people are predicting that they're going to end up at the top of the pile for the Premier League at the end of this season, but just looking like a team that did not miss a step after Jurgen Klopp, club legend, absolutely one of the best managers of all time in that conversation now, stepped down, wanted to pursue other things, take a little break from football, much deserved after bringing Liverpool to the heights that he did bring them, of winning a Premier League. And they won a Champions League, didn't they, under Klopp as well? Just a great showing as a manager. Like, you can't ask for more from him. And if you are a Liverpool fan, but just a manager fan in general, of course, if you're a Liverpool fan, you're going to love Klopp. But if you are just a fan of seeing a strong manager lead a team, Klopp is one of the best. Not only a fun personality, but always implementing unique strategies into his tactical wrinkles, which makes it fun from a coaching perspective for me to observe what he did. But he was out, so he's done. Don't need to talk about that anymore, because they have the slot machine picking up the pace and looking like a clean transition coming into a Liverpool team that maybe was a little in flux, not for sure having what identity they were going to have coming in under a new manager. But he did make changes. So they look tactically different from what they looked like under Klopp. And now with Slot, he did tweak some things, but it almost looked like a nice evolution of going from the tactics that Klopp used. And then Slot made some tweaks. They play a little bit of a different style of football now. But for some reason, he just knew what he was doing. I mean, kudos to him as a manager, getting all of the players on board, adjusting some of the player profiles as needed, and then really just dominating overall as the Premier League season came to an end. It really wasn't much of a competition. So it was pretty cool to see. What did you think about Liverpool last season overall?
Yeah, I mean, as a Man United fan, obviously, you'd think that they're having another manager. There's a couple of changes in that space. You'd think that maybe they'd stumble a little bit, or there'd be some sort of growing pains that Man United are kind of essentially having at the moment, where the new manager after new manager and things just haven't got the ball rolling. But it's frustrating to see, and I mean, it's good for football in general, but it's frustrating to see from a Man United perspective how quickly that team has gelled. That is just insane. I'm looking at some facts here, right? So, number one, and hurts most Man United fans, now we are currently they have clinched that the 20th Premier League, which equals Manchester United's all-time record. So we're up to 20, the 20 league titles. It's matching now where we're drawing with those guys. They actually beat on the final, essentially the match day 34. So this is like penultimate match day, right? They sealed that win with 5-1 against Tottenham Hotspur. So at the very end, there is just no holding back. Still 5 goals against Spurs. They actually finished with 84 points, 10 points ahead of Arsenal, right? Which we'll get into in a second. And also Mohamed Salah scoring 29 goals and 18 assists is crazy. Like just Premier League, I wouldn't say they steamrolled it, but they just had those 1-0 ground out the results, for example. And I just felt like Arsenal just didn't really get going at the end of the season. It felt like there was a couple of slip-ups, and then losing that to 10 points to Liverpool is crazy. I mean, I don't even know where to get started with Arsenal. What were your initial thoughts? I mean, if you're an Arsenal fan, you're thinking time's ticking, right?
Yeah, it's such a weird scenario if you are an Arsenal fan because they're performing well overall. Like if I'm a Manchester United fan, which I pretty much am, usually it depends on the day.
He's not sure.
Depends how mad I get about the club. But I would love to be where Arsenal are because they're competing every season toward the top of the table. I mean, at least top 3 typically. So I would be happy to be in that spot, especially I think Mikel Arteta is a good manager and he's still young. He's still learning and adjusting things as we go. I just think that I would be happy. I think that their time will come. It's always going to be competitive in the top 4 spots in the Premier League. And that's even expanding now. It's getting even more difficult, I think, in the top portion of the table of the Premier League because there's a bit more parity. More teams are investing in the right types of strategies to make them competitive. So whether that is like toward the top 4, you're just spending a ton of money. Whether that's like your top 8, they just have a bit more of like a better recruiting strategy. They bring in the right players that fit in the right systems to make them more competitive, just like a Nottingham Forest that we saw last season, which we'll talk about them for a second as well. Like just so many tough things to do if you're a club to try to compete and win a trophy, particularly in the Premier League. I really just don't have anything bad to say about Arsenal because I think they're competitive. They're continuing to do the right things, bring in the right players, try to find the right type of profile that fits the system that Arteta wants to play. I would just keep holding steady if I was on that ship. So that's where I would be. I would be happy.
Yeah, I think as an Arsenal fan, you're seeing the growth, you're seeing development, you're bringing in players, for example, players that want to play for you. You've got Champions League football 2 years in a row. Like it's you're heading in the right direction. I'm just going to blast through a couple of other results, by the way. Speaking of Champions League as well, we had, of course, the mighty PSG, who were just... I mean, that Inter Milan game 5-0, I don't remember, it seems ages ago, but watching that game, just seeing the sheer domination of the PSG team was crazy. Of course, the FA Cup as well we had, which was Crystal Palace actually beating Liverpool, which is an interesting one for the books as well. And of course, we had, in terms of the Europa League, we had, of course, Spurs somehow against that Man United team, who forgot how to play football that day, beaten 1-0, which has changed the trajectory of the Premier League transfer market and 2025 for good, to be honest. So, any of those results that are shocking to you, or any thoughts?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the results are shocking. I think being a manager, you know that on any day, any team can get slapped. The objective is to prevent that happening and just being more consistent and if you have an off day, which all teams do at every level, is like maybe just trying to lose 2-0 as opposed to like getting hit with a 5-1 loss. Different types of scenarios for different types of teams, of course. But some of the things I think that happened last season that were really cool are some of the new faces that you're seeing in Europe after a few years of just kind of the same consistent things. So we know that Chelsea finished higher than a lot of people thought. Not me. I got them right on. That's one of the only zeros I had in the predictions, which didn't help me anyway in the end. So if you want to hear about the predictions and how they went for us last season, go check out the previous episode. Yeah, spoiler there. Not the best for me. Granted, not the best showing for either of us, but yeah, I'll take the L for sure. But that means that Chelsea will be in one of the Champions League spots. So that's exciting. I'm curious to see what their thick squad will look like in the Champions League, because they're kind of built for this type of playing where they have the Premier League season, but now they're in a hardcore European Championship because they have such depth. Curious to see how that will filter out and how they utilize all their players. Not only that, Newcastle in the Champions League returning, I guess they were a powerhouse back in the 90s and did some good stuff in European football, but now actually back in the higher levels here. That'll be exciting to see, even though they did lose some of their players. So it'll be interesting to see how they're competing in that competition as well as in the Premier League now. But then Nottingham Forest are in European competition as well, not something anyone was anticipating. So that'll be exciting to see how they bounce back from such a great season last year as well. So I think that is the new faces in Europe is one of the exciting talking points for me. What do you think about our European competitions going into it this year from last year?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting for like you said, the likes of Chelsea, for example. I do think PSG will probably dominate again. I think for me, as a squad, the depth they've got, but also the players they've got. I mean, I know that what's his face? Ousmane Dembele's injured. I think he's out for 6 months, which is quite a pretty big loss. I think he was lined up for the Ballon d'Or, so I'm hoping he still gets that because I think that'll be pretty solid for his performances last season. But also the likes of Dua as well, is it? Plays for PSG again. Really young players, really quick players, and it's a shame Man United aren't in there. I think that's the key. I mean, as a shame as a fan not to see this high level of football at Old Trafford. I think it's not there. But I think if we talk about high level of football, Man United just aren't in the same breath as high level of football. I mean, I don't even know where to begin on this Man United squad, or even how to dissect this season. Was the number I try and forget the number. When there's when it's double figures, it's not good for Manchester United. A club of this level should not be anywhere near that, to be honest. And then, of course, the Europa League, which was awful as a game, but also I knew a lot of this season hinged on the power of that game in terms of money, in terms of bringing players to the club. And you've seen that in transfer market. Before we get into transfer market, what is your take on Manchester United of last season? That is the important question.
Yeah, it is a deep question. Before I do that, let me tell you one of my favorite things from last season, which will segue perfectly into this. It's the Manchester City collapse. So not only did our Reds collapse, probably a little harder, but City also collapsed from their usual standard. They had their worst season since 2016-2017, falling into third, which, I mean, I would be happy to be in third as a United fan, but not one that they were expecting. No trophies for them as well. So a lot of people interested to see how they will bounce back this season. But yeah, the other Manchester team also falling from grace, finishing toward the bottom of the table. Very sad to see. Man, I don't even know where to start with this club. I'm probably just going to say it's the same thing that has been happening season over season, which I talk about on every podcast year over year when we talk about Manchester United. The issue is not the players. The issue is not the manager. A little caveat there. I don't think Amram's the right manager here. But the issue overall, which is preventing either of the two groups that I mentioned from being successful, is the club management level. So that starts all the way at the top from Ratcliffe, which not necessarily his fault 100%. Granted, he's getting his hands probably a little too dirty inside of the club. I wouldn't want him managing some of these things. I would have him hire managers that know what they're doing in the football landscape to do those types of tasks, to restructure the club, to get rid of certain departments that are probably too overbloated, and then restructure some departments to make them more efficient. That is where the issue is for me. The structure of the club in the front and back office is what is preventing Manchester United from being a successful club. And we know this. We've been seeing this for season over season, and nothing has changed. So I don't really understand if this is like a conspiracy theory thing where they're trying to destroy the club, and are they trying to destroy it so much so the value goes down that the Glazers would want out so Ratcliffe can then purchase the rest of it, or maybe a different group can come in? I mean, I'm at this point where I'm putting on the tin hat because I don't know what they're doing. The definition of, I think it's what, chaos is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. There is probably no better explanation or example of that than Manchester United, because it's just continually the same thing, getting the same stupid results, and just watching this club crumble even further and further away. And they try to do these band-aid fixes by signing players that are decent, but we've seen this before. We sign good players, then they end up struggling at the club because the club has no idea what they're doing. It's not managed appropriately, and then they destroy their potential. And then you see them go off to other clubs and actually perform well, like Antony at Betis. So I just don't know where to go from here, because I feel like I'm hitting my head against a wall saying the same exact thing season over season. Do you have like a view, like a different light on this situation? I don't even know what to talk about anymore, because it's really the same thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it does begin from the higher ups. I think it looks from, like, for me, I was going to, of course, Ratcliffe situation, the whole board situation, the changing of board members. And I think people we had that guy from Newcastle, didn't we? The sporting director of some sort. And then he got put, like, it's just, there seems to be a lot of stuff. And if this was a business, and you're part of a business, or you're an employee at this business, so to speak, Manchester United, you're seeing this going on, and all it's thinking about is instability at a company level, right? You think instability at company, you're thinking, where are all the leaders gone in the situation, right? And if you think about it, your employees are getting paid thousands, and I mean like hundreds of thousands of pounds. Prime example, right, was this Grimsby game, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but this Grimsby game, now, people were slating this whole like Ruben Amorim situation. This whole thing went viral. We've all seen it, right? Him on the little clipboard with the strategy, and he's moving things around, and the people replacing the funny things. Cool, I get it. We are a laughing stock at the moment. I appreciate it's Grimsby Town, but there is only really, in my opinion, right, those 11 players, right, those Manchester United players versus on paper 11 Grimsby players, right? The amount of money, right, amount of training that Manchester United players have. Personally, those 11 players should beat that Grimsby team without a manager. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter who's managing, what the strategy is. If you watch that game, Man United are second to every single ball. There is no fight at all. Grimsby just want it more. Now that you can't get from a manager. The manager can get as many stuff that he wants to and put it on the board and go strategize wherever it is. At the end of the day, these players are Premier League players, right? They've played against other clubs. They've played in different levels, right? They've played against the Arsenal game, for example, was a good 45 minutes of here we go. We got something going on here. Like, there's nothing. There is just, for me at the moment, is the players don't seem sure of what they're doing. That necessarily is a manager thing, but also is as a club, I don't know, we're training people correctly, or is there just the passion isn't there, the fight for the shirt isn't there? But these 11 players should not, it doesn't matter. You don't need a strategy to beat a Grimsby team. It's like going to, like, it's another league. You should go in, play the man in front of you and score goals, irrespective of that. You've got players who've got better quality than the Grimsby Town players. No disrespect to the Grimsby Town players, but the quality just is different. But we were just beaten soundly. And that, for me, it shows that not just at the top level, that Manchester United are far, very extremely far, and we just don't have a plan yet. The players just don't want to play for the club anymore. And there's just a feeling that we're kind of going nowhere. We're a bit lost at player level, as well as Amorim, etc. I just feel at a player level, it's just a bit lost.
I agree. So to get into the weeds with the Grimsby game, you're 100% right. I think if I was managing Manchester United, I could win that game. Just looking strictly at the rosters, you should 100% have that Manchester United roster, no matter what label of team that they're on, just player for player, should be beating them 10 times out of 10. Like, there's not even a conversation where there's maybe a Grimsby stunner. Like, that should 100% be a United win every single time. That is the scary part to me, because I always talk about the club structure. I still think that's the reason, like the culture that is being created from the club. It's the same with like my Terra State team. So I coach, if you're not aware, at a community college here in Ohio. So community college is a 2-year school. So there are 4-year colleges where you go, you get your 4-year degree. Most common people would think of that. Then you have your 2-year school, which is an option of you can just get a 2-year degree, and it's a little bit more specialized. So that's like some of your skilled trades jobs. You can get a nursing degree in that portion of time. Some more of those like specialized career paths. Then if you want, you can continue on and finish your 2-year degree at a 4-year school. So I lay that out to say that, okay, the culture that is set at a 2-year school is sometimes different than a 4-year school, because you have 4 years to work with players as opposed to 2 years that I have to work with my players before they either graduate or go off to do something else. So it is so important, culture, to set that up with your team, with your club, no matter what level it is, so that they go out and perform and want to fight for the badge that they're wearing, whether that is Terrace State Community College or whether that is Manchester United at the Premier League level. The culture will dampen the results and the effort that you're going to get from the players on the pitch. So that's why for me, I'm always talking about the club structure, because I really think it starts at the top, as it does with every organization, making sure the CEO, the president, the upper executive leadership has the right culture in place, the right structure, making sure that everyone is on the same page, and then trying to get the best out of everybody, whether that's players on the pitch, whether that's players in the C-suite, or people in the C-suite trying to do specific tasks, if that's like the director of marketing or the director of partnerships, making sure that everyone is operating on the same playing field. I don't really have much else to say about the Grimsby game, because it's just a sad, poor performance. And I do agree that specific scenario, it'll start from the top, of course, but then it does come down to just players. Like, you are, as an individual player, you should be winning that game 100%. You should be dominating, having a better performance, player versus player, in position versus position. So that just goes to show the sad state of Manchester United. It's just a perfect example of where we are right now as a club. Not only that, though, like, it does kind of show some of the tactics. So I'm going to lay this out and I'll ask you a question about this one. I'm curious to get your takes. I already kind of spilled my view on this one a little bit. Amnarim, I think he's a decent manager, did awesome with Porto. And like, it was cool to see him be successful. I think he was at Porto, right? I want to say that's where he was. Yeah, I knew he was over. Sporting Lisbon. There we go. I knew he was over in Portugal. So Lisbon, yes. Yeah, with Gyökeres. How could I forget that? So he is a decent manager. We've seen him be able to do it before. However, the tactics that he's implementing at Manchester United, shades of what he did at Lisbon before this. But comparing some of the matches that I've watched before, it shows that he has some flaws in his systems that maybe he just doesn't comprehend himself, or he doesn't think are flaws and then just doesn't see them the same way. But he relies heavily on wingbacks, which is okay. But then there are other pieces of your system that you have to integrate, which it's just fallen off. So he just relies so heavily on those wingbacks that every other structure of his system and his tactics end up faltering, because there's such a reliance on those. And they're individual players. Like, they're not going to be able to carry the team for you unless you have like a Harry Kane as a wingback, which I don't even know if there's a wingback that's at that level that would be able to carry a Manchester United like this in this type of system. He has such a rigid system where he expects players to perform a specific type of task and doesn't give them a lot of fluidity to be creative. But then sometimes he gets frustrated with that. So then he gives them free reign, and then it's just a mess of a system because they have too much creativity and there's no real structure that they're trying to follow anyway. Then he tries to dive back in and like create some different patterns of like progression, but then those patterns are pretty standard and basic. Like, I see those types of patterns being run by other JUCO schools over here that I'm coaching against, which, no shade, like, definitely those are fundamental good things that you can do. But then you usually take one of those fundamental systems and then you build upon that and get a little bit more creative, especially if you're a full-time coach, because I am literally just like a part-time coach over here at a community college. Like, I have other jobs. If you are a full-time Premier League level coach, you should be able to create some interesting tactical wrinkles that will end up winning you games, because that's your full-time gig. So then my question to you off the back of this: is Amnarim the right manager for United? Usually I'm of the take that give the manager time. I don't know if he's the right guy.
I toy with this a lot, and I do flit a lot on this. Now, for me, I sometimes think it's unfair to put it just on the manager and whether it's the right manager or not. Right? In certain occasions, like the Grimsby Town one, for example, I wasn't mad at Amnarim, I was mad at the players, for example. Then you look at the Arsenal game, I'm thinking, wow, he's drilling them in here really well. We're running after each ball. Yeah, we lost, and I get it, right? But like, still, that was some of the best, like 30, 40 minutes of like actual getting the ball. I'm thinking, okay, so this is training. This is Amarim's style of play here, right? Where we're actually doing performances here. But for me, I do flit around with this. Amorim as a manager is a great manager, but he needs a particular squad to work. Now, other managers will take whatever squad they're given and turn that into gold, right? A Pep Guardiola, for example, is a prime example of that. Yes, he had players already, but all he really added was jigsaw pieces to the puzzle he already had going on anyway, right? He had players around him. He knew what players. He had to get the most of the players. His man management is very important. And I want to pull a link into man management for 1 second, because for me, saying, and this is genuine, and I'm waiting for this podcast just to say this because this is unforgivable in my opinion, saying that Kobe Mainu, right, is in competition with Bruno Fernandes is such a ridiculous statement, right? Because they're two very different players, and there's no way you can have both Bruno Fernandes or Kobe Mainu on the pitch at one time, right? That's one thing. Number two, Bruno Fernandes is an established captain of Manchester United. Kobe Mainu is one of Manchester United's and England's, let's clarify that as well, and England's one of the best players in the Euros, right? And is a fantastic player in his own right. But putting him and giving him, imagine you're a player right now and you're being told that you're up against a player that's undroppable in Bruno Fernandes. You're literally thinking there's no point playing football. Like even the post he did when he's got the whiplash post, for example, he's seen it. It's like it's on his Instagram, right? Like he's trying. He's trying his best. Garnacho is a prime example of that. Yeah, his attitude wasn't great. But again, one of Manchester United's best players. Is that a management thing? Was he just like, he's throwing his toys out of pram, it's not really for me. You know, let's just go and Garnacho was done. Like I just feel like there's key players in that. Rasmus Højlund, for example, the way I personally think that depth alongside Benjamin Sesko would have been fantastic. Yet he's gone as well. Rashford, another prime example, just doesn't fit into the system, right? But how are we letting a player at Rashford's level? Don't get me wrong, he didn't have a great season. He had a poor season. But it's Marcus Rashford. You give him the ball at some point. Let's say, for example, at Grimsby Town, a prime example, you've got Marcus Rashford on the bench. It's 70 minutes in, you're 1-0 down. Marcus Rashford's going to do something, man. He's going to turn those players inside out, at least somehow, right? I'm always a big Marcus Rashford fan. Yes, he didn't backtrack at all, but it just felt like players tend to have a problem with Amorim in general. So whether the answer to your question, maybe is Amorim the right manager, I'm thinking to myself, well, is he really making the right plays here as a man manager? Does he feel like for example, maybe the club's too big for him and he's so strict and he's so potentially small-minded and wants to do this sporting style game? Or are we going to be, once it clicks for him, he's going to be like, this way he's played is amazing. This club here, the way they're doing, the way this game is playing it, once it clicks for him. I don't know, man. It feels very much like they're trying to build this Bayer Leverkusen style, like unbeatable team here. This where every player, you've got your Frimpong, you've got Boniface, for example. You know, you've got players in that are like key players. He's trying to build one team. That's all he's trying to build, one team. And it's just not working. So, in answer to your question, percentage-wise, I'm 60 no, 40% yes right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably a better percentage than I got. I do not think that he is the right manager. And I think that Manchester United just made a mistake in hiring him. So I've looked back at all the previous managers, and there at least has been some sort of an identity of looking for a manager that will fit with the players that are currently on the roster. So we have like Van Gaal, we have Moyes, we have Mourinho, we have even Gunnar Solskjaer. I mean, he is kind of an outlier because we don't really know what he was as a manager fully. But all of those managers fit somewhat within their style, the roster that Manchester United had at that time. Amorim does not. The style that he played doesn't really fit any of the players that we had. So then knowing that we're bringing him in, you essentially have to recreate the entire roster. With those other managers, you just got to tweak some of the fringe players, bring in a certain piece here or there. But this one, you got to really restructure. So I don't know why or who made that decision to bring him in, because I think he is a good manager if he has the right pieces in place. But man, it's just not the right type of roster for him. And then it creates this problem, which culture times the wrong manager. Putting those together, you get just a sad situation, because now you're forcing players out that were really good for the squad, that were a part of the club. Like Garnacho is a perfect example. I think he's an awesome player. He's fun to watch. He's exciting. Really one of our best consistent performers over the last couple of seasons. And he ends up getting forced out just because doesn't get the right type of playing time. The culture is already bad. And then no one is really sure, since his attitude's a little snappy, if he should be a part of it. Amorim then doesn't want him to be a part of it. it's just stressful for me to watch because he was so fun and so cool. And I think we had such a good core of young players that really could have been awesome and made our team great, but now we don't, and we force them out the door because we're trying to create some weird system. We're in a manager that is not tried and true in a culture deficient club. Like, it's just all a mess to me, and it won't get better until it's better at the top. We can keep replacing managers, we can keep trying to bring in new players. I don't think it'll ever get better until we fix that stuff.
I mean, we could talk about this for ages, the whole episode, but I think we need to move forward. As you talked about, we're talking about players. We're talking about, I mentioned Ben and Sesko, for example. I'm also talking about transfer market, talking about players, and this has been the biggest transfer window in terms of players. It's got most expensive players. We have the biggest money spent as well. And on top of that, we've had some weird twists as well, which we'll get into briefly. But I just want to get into number one, generally. Right? So my first question more generally is, what is your thought on the amount of money, right, that is being spent in 2025, right, in world football? Well, that's the first thing. And secondly, who's been your what do you think, who's in the best business? I think it's an obvious answer, but who do you think is the best business?
Oh, yeah, it is crazy. I mean, having the record of like over $1 billion spent in one transfer window. I not gonna lie, I didn't see it coming, especially for a lot of these teams. I will give you, my player that I'm probably most excited about, the new player. I want to say Sesko. I rate Sesko so highly, not even just because I am.
So do I.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I feel like if you just watch his highlights, he's huge, kind of lanky, but still strong and just athletic. Like, oh my goodness, I am just excited to see him play. Which the nervous part of me is he's at Manchester United, so is he really going to perform that well? Who knows? But I think he will be an exciting player. So that is why I'm so stoked to see him play. I've already talked about previous episode. I think Grealish is going to have a great season. I think he's going to help lift Everton up to make them toward the top of the table, in at least the top half, which is what you saw with my predictions in the last episode. So I think those two are my players to watch. When it comes to overall seeing all the spending and what clubs are doing, some clubs do it better than others. Some just throw money at a problem. So, for example, Newcastle, they had so many different targets that they were trying to pursue, but could really not get any of them. So they ended up settling for a couple different players and then overpaying, in my perspective, for some of those players. So it's like Voltermod. I don't even know how to say his name. Sorry, the German striker, I think from Wolfsburg. Super cool looking dude. Love the hair. He looks like he's got some swagger. I am excited to see him play. Hopefully he does well at Newcastle. Same with Wissa. Like, those are players that don't necessarily go to top tier teams to be the top striker or a top attacker in general. But that's what those guys are going to have to be at Newcastle. And Newcastle paid an extra fee of like 25 to 45 on top of what the actual potential price should be on Transfermarkt. I looked up some of their values. So I think they overpaid. And I think that is a stressful example of a club that doesn't get their target, so they throw money at the problem. On the flip side of that, I think the best business, I mean, how do you not say Liverpool? They didn't even spend the most out of all Premier League teams, but then the players that they brought in already starting to perform, and they filled in some of the needs that they were missing out on last season. I think Florian Wirtz is going to be amazing. I think that is the one signing that also excites me and that will fit in perfectly because they needed that creativity, and he's just such like a creative number 10. He would do so well, I think, in any team. And the typical like creative 10, that's not necessarily something that we see as we did like in the 10 years past or so. But now I think he is like that creative 10. And I think maybe having him in there performing so well, maybe that'll bring back like the number 10 role a little bit more, make that more of an emphasis in attacks as like tactics and formations continue to shift. I think he'll be good as well. But yeah, I think Liverpool for me, just the best business around, not even spending the most amount of money, not even including the Isak signing, which I don't think they even needed. But then just to add it on top of it, I mean, if you can manage his personality correctly, then I think, geez, they're going to be just unstoppable.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, where do you begin with Liverpool? I mean, as a club, they are. I mean, I'll get into this. I want to ask you something afterwards about this particular thing. It's actually my take or leave it. So it's going to come up, but I'll come back to that in a second. But I really feel like they just knew what they wanted. And as a club, who doesn't want to play for Liverpool at the moment, right? They have probably got the best chance Premier League. They've probably, money-wise, they're just pretty comfortable. You don't need to tell a player that they're coming to Liverpool twice. Like, when Liverpool's an offer, you're coming through. And that's because the Champions League price at the moment they're in, they seem a team it's kind of what Man United potentially used to be back in the day. I know as a Man United fan, they always laugh at us for talking about history, but there was a point where we were just a force, right? And that no one, anytime we put Man United there, however, no matter how much it is, I'm coming, right? Here, that is exactly the same with Liverpool. Like, for me, I think by far they're the best business. I think another thing I was going to mention, obviously, was the dark horses on this are Spurs. If you think about it, if you think about Kudus, for example, you think about the likes of Xavi Simons, which is going to be Simons, is going to be insane when he gets in that, especially the fact that James Maddison's injured. So there's that, and on top of that as well, you got Kuala Mwandi, which is going to be Kuala Mwandi is an incredible player. So I think for me, they are going to be probably the ones to watch as well. What I think more generally about the transfer market is it the Saudis that are really kind of pushing this up? Because are the Premier League clubs, for example, are potentially other clubs around the European market looking at the Saudis and going, well, any of our players could just go there if they wanted to, really, if they were really after the money. So is it a case of them, do you think perhaps that the Saudis are bringing that money in, which is meaning that players like Voltemode, for example, is like 90 million? I think the Bayern boss or the Bayern sporting director, for example, was on an interview recently and him saying he's not worth it at all. And saying, I mean, that might be a bit salty from his side, probably, I'm assuming. They've got Kane, they don't need anybody else, but like maybe, but him saying like he's not worth it at all, like it's the Saudis that essentially have pushed the prices to that point. So do you think that potentially the Saudis are shaping the market?
I don't. I think that is just an uneducated or an angry view on the economics of transfers in the world of football. Ultimately, it's just supply and demand. It just depends on who needs who and who's willing to pay what amount of money for that who. The issue, I think, overall is that we put such an emphasis on certain types of players in certain types of systems. Because if you're looking at a Brighton, like they don't spend a ton of money typically. In the past transfer window, they did spend a nice little chunk, but typically they're a selling club and they bring in and develop players. They're not spending a ton of money, but they're doing pretty well and they buy players smartly. Then if you look at other teams, so now this past window, you look at Liverpool, you look at United, you look at Newcastle, they're overspending on the typical value of what you see a player is worth. I mean, now it comes down to the clubs that are willing to pay that. It's just there's always the Premier League tax that people talk about, the United tax, that players are more expensive for the teams in that league or for those specific teams because all those other teams that are transferring those players into them know that they have the money to be able to spend to do. And this just further cements that. So I think you have to be more of like a Brighton and purchase players that are more of those key players or that are developmental pieces for the future. That's the only way that this market will kind of calm down. Because is Isak, do you really think Isak is worth whatever the 145 that was paid for him? And I'm sure there are add-ons on top of that. Like, to me, I don't think there's a player that is worth that amount of money when you could go out and buy 4 or 5 players for that price that are younger, that you can develop and then keep a part of your program longer, and that won't have the pressure to perform like an Isak would. So I think, yeah, overall, it is not Saudi. It is the higher clubs that are paying these prices, that are pulling the Premier League tax higher and the club tax for those individual clubs higher as well. So that's what I think is the issue with these high inflated prices, and it won't go down until those clubs just stop paying extra money for these types of players.
It's a fair look at it. I think you're bang on. There is definitely this whole idea that the Saudis are trying to take over. There is that kind of conspiracy a little bit potentially, or also that idea that perhaps these players would rather go just for money. It doesn't really matter where it is. They just want to play for money. But you mentioned transfer market. I want to take us to our take it or leave it. Sorry, this or that. Is it take it or leave it? It's a take it or leave it. I'm a bit rusty.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones. Take it or leave it, but it is related to Isak. And take it or leave it essentially is a statement around that, and it's very bluntly put. Liverpool with Isak, like the pressure was already went on them to win the Liverpool Premier League now, but now the pressure is like they have to win the Premier League. Right? There's no more excuses, in my opinion, that Liverpool need to win the Premier League, and there's no more excuses. That's it.
I would take it because when you go and spend that amount of money on a single player, like that's what your goal is. Like you're spending that amount of money to try to win the Premier League. There's really no other reason that you should not be, especially if you already have a roster that was pretty solid to start with. And I don't think you even need Isak to be the title favorites, but you plug him in, and yeah, I think they should 100% be the favorites. They should go out and win it. And it really just comes down to spending that amount of money on a player. If you're that dedicated to dropping that amount of cash, then you should go out and win the Premier League 100%. Are you taking that or are you leaving it?
I'm with you. I'm exactly the same. I just think they already had it on their back, so they needed to win, right? But now with the likes of Isak, it's technically Liverpool's to lose now. And the pressure on them was already there, but now they are beyond favourites. They have to win it now. There's no two way about it, right? Like I think where did you? I think I had them as winning again. You had them winning it again, Diaz. So it's so clear now, and they've added Isak into that. That depth now is just unbelievable. So I would argue that perhaps they should even be a shout for the Champions League. I mean, if we're going to put it out there, right? If you put it in the Premier League, if they run right in the Premier League, then surely the Champions League should also be on their doorstep, right? So yeah, that was my thought, but I just feel like that is it's an important thing to kind of put forward because they spent a lot of money and they have to win it now. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that one. When you got the cash to drop and you do it, yeah, you got to back it up with results. Now, my take it or leave it for you. Very topical. So mine is managers have a bigger impact on team performance than upper management. Are you taking that or leaving it?
Now, upper management, you're referring to like C-suite, the board, etc., right? And
yep.
You're saying that the manager has more an influence on that than.
Yes, I'm asking if you're gonna take or leave it of saying that yes, managers have a bigger impact on the team performance than upper management. So your front office, your back office, the C-suite people.
It's my initial response is I would take the 100% because I feel like. Managers, it's kind of like the way I kind of see it, for example, it is they provide the strategy. If you look at it from a company perspective, and I mentioned this already, for example, but a company perspective, they manage the employees, right? They report to the higher ups, but essentially it's their strategy. It's their way to build this to get the results, essentially. They've got KPIs to hit like everyone else has in the planet, right? They've got KPIs to hit. So it's down to the manager to influence and to put the team performance. But at the same time, I would argue that the C-suite, for example, hold the keys in terms of how much money they're going to get, for example, the quality of the ground, and maybe that may influence team performance, for example. They're not putting where their money, where their mouth is, for example. They're not putting in the energy into the club overall from a overarching club perspective. Does that hit team performance? The way I would answer that the team manager does influence the performance, but I would say in the long run, as a club, the environment around you is down to the hierarchy. So I would say in the long run, it's probably going to be hierarchy, but in the short term, it's manager. So I'm going to take it for sure.
Okay, so you're taking it. I do think it is a case-by-case basis, so it will change depending on the club and the scenario that you're in. I think if I'm looking overall, I'm going to leave it. I think that upper management, so yeah, your C-suites, the people that run the club, the directors, sporting directors, all those people, I think have a bigger impact overall on the club. And I just have the example of Manchester United. Like if you have a strong, competent group of people that know the structure of how the club should operate, and you have those individuals in roles that they're comfortable in and they know what they're doing, I think that makes the job so much easier for the manager and then ultimately for the players. So if that's set up correctly, I think that will ultimately have a larger impact than managers do. So more specifically with the Grimsby Town game, like you were talking about, myself or you could have probably been the manager, and that United team should still win with us there, or maybe even not a manager at all. If it's just like a Sunday league, they just show up and they play without a actual manager, they should win that game. So that's why I don't think managers, they do play a part, of course, and definitely influence teams. But I think overall, the C-suite, the directors of the club that set the culture have a larger overall impact on team performance individually.
I like that. It's a good way of looking at it, to be honest. I think the way I kind of pose it, the short term, long term, I'm looking at it more kind of holistically, but I like the way you've thought about it from like the live example, for example, like Grimsby Town. Prime example of that. Because I'm extremely rusty and we should have opened with our Nutmegged, we're going to end with our Nutmegged. Before we do that, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about, because we're in this idea of teams underperforming, I want you to talk us through current state of the US men's team, but go through it.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a hot second. Same boat as what Manchester United is struggling with at the moment. Not the best culture around the team. It's not being managed appropriately. I was stoked when Pochettino was coming in as a manager, but unfortunately, I don't think that he has managed the squad correctly. I don't know if that comes down to culture, and he just is not as aware of what soccer fans in the US expect from the national team and how the players react as Americans, a part of our weird US soccer system. I don't think he's managed it appropriately. The reason we're talking about this is because they just had a friendly yesterday against South Korea, who are ranked lower than the US in the FIFA rankings, which FIFA rankings a little sus, but overall, we should at least be having a competitive match against them. They beat us 2-0 in New Jersey, so also a home game. Should have had a little extra flavor there. But yeah, we didn't even really create too many interesting chances, giving us an opportunity overall. And Son just looked like he was dominating the match. Our defenders didn't know what they were doing. So it is the 6th loss in 8 attempts against the top 25 teams since the World Cup in 2022. The drama out there about the Berhalter saga, about how he was out and then they brought him back in for a little while, then he was out again. Unfortunately, I still don't know where we are after all of that. So he was at least solid defensively with his structure. He preferred a more solid defensive setup. We don't even have that anymore. We don't have any systems really whatsoever that make us competitive in games where we should be competitive. Pochettino has faced a lot of criticism for his tactical inconsistencies. He has had 14 different lineups in 17 games with 9 different center back pairings. Now, some of that is due to he's trying to figure some stuff out. He's a new manager. He's working in new players, trying to get them ready for the World Cup, all that kind of stuff. I get that. However, there should, at least at this point, be a little bit of consistency in terms of where players are playing. It's just a stressful time to be a U.S. men's national team fan. Now we have to go to an even tougher Japan team on the 9th. So that's going to be scary. So I'm disappointed as a U.S. men's national team fan, as I am a Manchester United fan. I feel like my national teams let me down. My club teams let me down. Thankfully, I'm a whole city fan. So our results haven't been too bad over there down in the championship. So the local club at least doing me right.
I was going to ask how Hull City are doing, so that's good to know, man. Yeah, spirits are still high. Some respect.
trying to be. That's all we can do.
I love that. So we're now going to get into Nutmegged of the Week. I'm going to kick us off with a Nutmegged of the Week, which it's probably Nutmegged of the last week, to be honest, because it was news everywhere, and we kind of know where this is probably going. It is with our previous manager, our previous Manchester United manager, and it's to do with this Bayer Leverkusen team and sacking Ten Hag after, quote, this is just crazy stuff, by the way, roughly 180 minutes of competitive football, making one of the shortest managerial stints in Bundesliga history. This is what we're working with. This is Ten Hag, who, I mean, like I said, I don't know no ill health on Ten Hag. I think, like I said, he had some bad times as a Manchester United manager, but he did get a cup, for example. So I think there is definitely elements but I was low key thinking, was it us or was it the manager here? So it kind of maybe not vindicated it, but I did think what's happening here? What people have seen? Why did Manchester United give him so long, and yet Bayer Leverkusen have been given 180 minutes potentially these 2 games? So, and he's described it as like complete utter surprise, and he's criticised the club specifically for lacking trust in him, where Manchester United had trust in him. and we know how that went, right? So there's that. So, but then I feel like maybe there's like a PR situation here by Bayer Leverkusen trying to sort of like make sure they made the correct decision and telling the PR and making it clear they did make the decision by talking about how it was highlighted there's internal issues apparently around communication, questionable involvement in transfer dealings, and including proposals favouring his own agency's players, which is not great. I mean, I don't know whether that's questionable in terms of whether Manchester United players potentially were bought in that reason. Apparently, there's a bad atmosphere in the club as well, and he did still manage at least one win, and it was against a lower division team in the German Cup. So it's not looking great, and I think they were just like, it was cut our losses really early. But I'm sorry, it is crazy that you're giving a manager 180 minutes of football and gone, yeah, this is not it. There's obviously more deeper levels to it. But that is my nutmeg of the week. So yeah, just unfortunate Ten Hag times.
Yeah, I don't rate Ten Hag super highly as a manager. I do like his more direct, kind of intense style. Sounds like he's not a great man manager or culture manager in general. So at least they made the decision of saying, okay, definitely not the right path of where we're going to go. We need to cut ties ASAP. But then that's Leverkusen's fault for not going through a better hiring process. Like, what are you doing? If you hire a manager and then get rid of him that quickly, you need to figure out how to hire a manager and actually have some process in place to make sure you're doing that the right way. So you don't have to fire your manager. And then I don't even know how long his contract is, paying him for the next X amount of time. So yeah, a little goofy on the Ten Hag front. Mine also is not the happiest of scenarios. So Raheem Sterling, he did not get a transfer move if you've been paying attention to the transfer market. So he is still at Chelsea. And he has made the decision, instead of moving, because he didn't get the move he was looking for, he is just going to sit out for the next 4 months. I always think that's crazy when players just sit out and don't play, but they'll just practice. And I get like he's kind of shoved out of the club as well in general because they don't have a plan for him. Now, there are rumors that Chelsea are thinking about trying to mutually agree about ending the contract 2 years early to see if they would be open with that. And yes, I said 2 years early. So he has a quite a long contract still, which that is insane to me. How do you, as a club, not have forward thinking enough to figure out the best way to use these players? And then in the end, you say, I don't really want this player, but we gave him like a 4-year contract. So now we're just going to pay him for no reason and let him just hang out. I still think that is also poor management and just crazy to me. Just goes to show how much money is in football and how much it doesn't even matter. He, by the way, is also the highest wage earner on the team. Yes, pretty wild. So that's my nutmeg of the week. A little bit of nutmeg for sprinkle a little bit on Rashford. Sorry, not Rashford. I wish Rashford. I wish I could still be sprinkling some nutmeg on him. But on Raheem, and then sprinkle a little on to Chelsea, because both just a goofy situation for both involved.
Yeah, it's. I liked Raheem Sterling. I mean, as an England fan during the Euros and some of his performances, I think he's a really good player. I think I just don't like the way it's ended up in this sort of fashion. I think he was very good at City. Arsenal just didn't want him. And I just find that sad because I feel like he could have been a solid player for Arsenal. I think there's definitely they could have done with that depth. But yeah. So that is us for another episode. Any final words for us, Andrew? We get to close the episode.
Yeah, nothing other than if you are a U.S. men's national team fan like myself or a Manchester United fan like myself, I would love to say that there are brighter waters ahead, but there might not be. So hold on for a bumpy ride.
Hold on for a bumpy ride, indeed. So appreciate you guys joining us. We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. If you've got any questions, do DM us, and hopefully you get into a little pitch somewhere, and just make sure one thing, you just don't get nutmegged. So enjoy, guys. Bye.
Peace.